Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. So before we get started, of course, we do the viewer's pick of the week at the end of the episode, so for a chance to be featured on the show, please leave your pick of the week in the comments below. I also do have a Kickstarter going on right now for my webcomic, Slice of Life. It's about an anime character that comes to life and falls in love with a high school cheerleader. We have about 15 days left for that campaign. Now, jumping into this week's comics, I do have about 10 books, so a pretty average amount of comics for the week. And I don't have my physical books because, as you can see, I am in a different section here. I'm at my brother's house because I went to Soda City Comic Con for selling my books, so that is why I'm not in the regular space and why you're not seeing the physical comics this week, but I'll be back in my normal space next week. So let's get started. My number 10 pick is A Thing Called Truth, issue 1. This is something I got on whim. The artwork looked really good. I like that it was two female characters kind of being buddy cops here, and honestly, it was a little hard to get into this one. I love the art. The artwork was really cartoony, really bright, and really worked for this comic, but the story and the character, I really wasn't sucked in, and you don't really get to see the two girls until the end of the episode, or the end of the issue, and I feel like the story doesn't really get started until then, and I don't know if the main character was strong enough for me to want to get the next issue. I'm not usually into like science-y stories, so seeing her story just didn't really grab me as much, but hopefully it will ramp up a bit now that these two characters are together. But overall, I'm going to give that 2 stars. It just really wasn't for me. Moving on to number 9, which is Batman issue 116. So as you guys know, I haven't really been loving this arc for Batman, and I'm just kind of interested to see how it ends, but I just feel like it's been pretty slow. I will say this issue at least has some momentum. We do get to see maybe Scarecrow dies, who knows? He gets hurt really badly in this issue. You get to see a little bit more of the buddy dynamic between Miracle Molly and Batman. So we do get to see that story. You get a little bit more with Poison Ivy as well, who, in another circumstance, I think I would have really liked to see more Poison Ivy, but I just feel like they haven't been utilizing her enough, and her going fully villain just doesn't interest me. I like when she plays an anti-hero more. I do like the artwork a lot here, though. There's a lot of good action in this issue, but this arc honestly just hasn't been doing it for me, and tying into Future State hasn't really been great for me. So moving on to number 8, this is a new comic book called Newburn, issue 1. There's actually a lot of indie books a lot of indie number 1s that came out this week. So Newburn is from Chip Zdarski. So blindly, I picked up this issue because it's Chip Zdarski and he never fails. And this issue is definitely really interesting. We get to see this kind of corrupt, I wouldn't call him a cop, he's a detective character, and he kind of has a shield against all the bad guys, so he's really untouchable, which is very interesting. And then he ends up teaming up with this woman who has this kind of twist in the end of the issue where he's like, okay, now we're gonna work together. And I like the ending. For me, it just wasn't a genre I'm too interested in, so I wasn't as sucked in as I usually am with Chip's stories, but I do think it puts a nice twist and puts this genre on its head because of the corrupted character he is, and also the pulpiness of the art really worked for me as well here. But again, not enough to pick up the next issue, even though I think the cliffhanger really picked up things where, relatively in the middle was a little bit of a slow issue. But, if you like this genre, if you like Chip's writing, try out this first issue. Maybe you'll be hooked a little bit more than I was. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. So moving on to number 7, which is Firepower, issue 17. And this issue was more of an action issue. I feel like this is where the series kind of falters, when it's just purely action and not really driven by character. And you get some character moments, like I enjoyed the ex-girlfriend and Kelly, the wife. The ex-girlfriend protected Kelly, so I thought that was really interesting. I'm curious to see the trio's dynamic as the series goes on, but mostly it's them fighting the serpent guy, and Kelly and Owen getting away from said bad guy. And then in the end, the children reunite already 2 issues later. They're like, Mom, Dad, we're here. So, which is better. I like when the family's interacting. I think that's much better for the series. But overall, this was a slower issue, it was more of an action issue, even though the action was gorgeous and the artwork is so tremendous for this book. I do like when the book has a bit more character beats to deal with. So I'm giving that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Crossover issue 9, a book that I want to be a little bit more excited for. Like, I like it, it's on my pull list, but it's kind of always mid-ground book for me, and this issue kind of does the same. You get some slow parts of moving the chess pieces together, figuring out who has killed these comic book writers, a lot of meta-textual things in this issue as well, which is always fun, but I feel like sometimes the book uses as a crutch for the actual story movement. But you get a really awesome cliffhanger with the Powers characters, finding this kind of Batarang-styled thing in the end where you're like, okay, well, who's killing these people? Who is the bad guy of this story? And artwork is always really good, and again, the Easter eggs are really good, but I just want a little bit more punch from this story, so I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Crush and Lobo, issue 6, and I believe we only have 2 issues left of this book, and overall, it's a fun ride. This one's a point A to point B, kind of tracking the same type of water that we've been seeing in this series of Crush feeling bad that she broke up with her girlfriend, and then we get a whole scenario kind of relating to the emotional turmoil and the more psychological analysis of Crush breaking up with her girlfriend, all while she's trying to find Lobo. It's a pretty solid story, but I feel like this is the more forgettable one compared to some of the other issues, just because, again, it's kind of tracking similar water than what we've been seeing in the series. But it's still a fun ride, and I still really love Crush's voice. I love the artwork for this book, and it's just a fun book. And definitely one of DC's most solid books, especially character-driven wise. So moving into number 4, which is Darkhawk issue 3, and Man, oh man, one of my favorite Marvel books going on right now, and it just feels like a true origin where you don't know what's going to happen in the next chapter, because this is such a relatively new character for a C-list mantle, which is super interesting. So I feel like you could do a little bit more with this story. And the artwork is probably the weakest part of this issue. I do wish there was some more, there's so many emotional beats here. I feel like I wish those were a little bit stronger. But yeah, I mean in the artwork style, not the writing. I thought the writing is really good for these emotional beats. And we get to see our main character's friend has died, and him dealing with trying to find the murderer and feeling the guilt of that, all while he's trying to figure out what these powers are and how this is affecting his illness. And then Miles Morales shows up in the end, which I don't know why they keep trying to stick Miles into this book. I just kind of want to see this character separate from the Marvel Universe. But, I thought this was a very solid story with some great emotions. And ironically, this kind of feels like the same issue as the next book I'm going to talk about, which is written by the same person. It literally is just like these characters dealing with the grief of their friend, and it kind of is paced very similarly, in a similar way, I should say. And the only reason that this made number 4 was because of the art style, and I thought this third book was a little better with the art. But honestly, I thought the emotions and the writing was a little stronger in Darkhawk. But moving into that number 3 pick, which is Radiant Black issue 9. In Radiant Black, we get to see, again, a very similar story of our new main character dealing with the potential death of his friend, but the twist is maybe his friend's not dead. I do think it gets a little confusing by the end when we're trying to explain all that. I'm like, okay, I wish this was explained not as fast as it was, and hopefully it's fleshed out a little bit more in that next issue. But I thought the emotions were pretty good for this one. I do think the sake of repetitiveness, because literally it's trying to be repetitive, got very repetitive, and I think maybe 1 or 2 could have been cut out of his daily routine. But I liked his bond with his friend. I actually wish we got to see even more with him and his friend, and him and Nathan, just figuring out what their relationship was beforehand. But you do get to see the turmoil that this character is going through with some great art, and him trying to balance his superhero life as well. So overall, I thought it was a pretty solid issue, and definitely moving forward the plot of, who the hell is the main character of this book, which has probably been one of the more interesting parts of Radiant Black. So moving on to number 2, which is The Meat You Love in the Dark, issue 4. This issue really surprised me. Honestly, as every issue goes on, I grow to really like this series. Just because it's another series you don't really know what it's about or what you're going to get for the next issue. You know, you thought it was this love story, and then you find out that it just kind of isn't. It's maybe a story about abuse, and that's what this issue is fully about, of like, okay, this guy's not a good guy, this ghost character, and how it's affecting her work, how it's affecting her other relationships, and her trapping herself into this house, you know, was part of this abusive relationship, and, you know, pushing everybody away, and what that means for her art as well. And I just really like, again, I didn't expect it to go this direction. I didn't really, you know, what I like is that it's so ominous that what this relationship actually is. And the artwork is so gritty and really nice, and overall, just a surprising series that I can't wait to see where it goes. So I'm going to give that 4 stars, and that is number 2. I also don't think I gave the ratings for Radiant Black and Darkhawk. If I didn't, they're both 4-star books. So moving into number 1, which is Dark Knights of Steel, issue 1. And I was really, really surprised by this issue because I don't like medieval stories. It's just not my thing usually. I don't quite care about the King Arthur stuff. Like, I know the gist of it, but not really a fan. And honestly, in the beginning, I was a little worried about it. I'm like, all right, we're really getting into this medieval stuff. But it's Tom Taylor, and he puts this awesome twist on the DC universe. And as we get to introduce more and more characters, you get sucked into this world. First, it's just, okay, Superman's new origins, that his parents never died. Then we get introduced to Batman, and then all the Robins show up, and you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then you have Black Canary have this really interesting midpoint, and some really good visuals there, as she's called the Banshee, and they're playing with what is magic and comparing that to superpowers. And then you get to see Green Arrow, you get a little bit of Green Lantern in this as well, but the big moment is the end, where it's revealed that Batman and Superman are brothers, that actually he is the son of Jor-El as well, and then Jor-El dies by Green Arrow, a kryptonite arrow, probably. We don't actually know if that's confirmed or not, but yeah, that was such a good ending. You get the beautiful panel in the end of comparing it to, you know, obviously the original Batman death, and it was just such a good, shocking ending. And it kind of is like Injustice: Gods Among Us, where it's you're playing with a lot of similar characters. So a lot of similar characters. You have Harley here, you got Green Arrow, you got Black Canary. Obviously Batman and Superman, but you get to see a very different dynamic with their relationship, and I think this could go really far. And honestly, I'm glad it doesn't rely on the medieval stuff. It doesn't go too far into the lingo of the medieval stuff. I think, you know, sometimes with those type of comics, you'll get so far deep in that dialogue that it's so heavy, it's hard to get into the characters, and that doesn't do that. I think it gives you the vibe of that genre, but doesn't lean too heavily where it would isolate other fans like me, maybe people that don't like medieval stories as much. But it was such a good premiere issue. I shouldn't be surprised. Tom Taylor is really great with an issue 1, and I mean with everything, but especially in issue 1. And it really did its job. It made me excited for that next issue, and it really created a world in only 20-something pages, which is, you know, hard for any issue 1 in such a big accomplishment. So I'm giving that my number 1 pick, and I give that 4.5 stars. Let me know in the comments below what was your favorite comics of the week, because we do the viewer's pick of the week. And let's start talking about that viewer's pick of the week, which from last week was the House of Slaughter, the new Something is Killing the Children spinoff. And here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.